In a quiet neighborhood, where life moved at a steady pace, a small act of kindness was about to set off a chain of events that would change everything. A black man named Marcus, known for his big heart and helping nature, found himself on an ordinary Saturday morning, ready to tackle his weekend errands. Little did he know that today would be anything but ordinary. As Marcus drove through his neighborhood, he spotted a woman in distress by the side of the road. Her car sat awkwardly, its tire flat and defeated. The sun beat down, and frustration was visible on her face. Without thinking, he pulled over to help. It was a simple act, one that he had done countless times before, but for him, it was just part of who he was. "Need some help?" he called out, stepping out of his car. The woman looked up, surprise quickly giving way to relief. Her name was Lisa, and she was stranded. She had been on her way to an important job interview, and the last thing she needed was this setback. Marcus rolled up his sleeves and got to work. He could feel the weight of her anxiety, the pressure of a ticking clock as he changed the tire. As they talked, he learned about her life, her dreams, and the struggles she faced. Lisa shared her story, and Marcus listened. Their conversation flowed easily, filled with laughter and shared experiences. It was a brief moment of connection in a world that often felt disconnected. With the tire finally changed, Lisa thanked Marcus profusely. "I don't know what I would have done without you," she said, her eyes shining with gratitude. "I hope I can repay you somehow." Marcus just smiled and waved it off. He felt good knowing he had made a difference, no matter how small. The next day, as he sat on his porch enjoying a cup of coffee, the peaceful morning was shattered by an unexpected sight. A sleek black SUV pulled up in front of his house, its windows tinted dark enough to obscure the driver inside. A chill ran down his spine. Something about that vehicle felt off. Marcus squinted, trying to get a better look as the door swung open. He had no idea that the small act of kindness from the day before would lead to this moment. The tension in the air was palpable, and a sense of unease settled over him. As the figure stepped out of the SUV, Marcus's heart raced. Who were they? Why were they here? As the stranger approached, Marcus's mind raced with questions. He couldn't shake the feeling that this visit was more than a simple thank you. Had Lisa told someone about him? Or was this person connected to something deeper, something darker? The man walking toward him was tall, dressed in dark clothes, his face hidden by the shadow of a cap. There was a confident stride in his steps, and Marcus felt a growing sense of dread. He forced himself to remain calm, to stand his ground. "Can I help you?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The man stopped a few feet away, studying Marcus with an intensity that made him shiver. "You helped Lisa yesterday," he said, his voice low and smooth. "She needed that tire changed, and you stepped up." Marcus nodded, feeling a mix of pride and caution. "Yeah, just doing my part," he replied, his gut twisting. The man took a step closer, and Marcus felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. "What you did for her was good," he continued, "but you need to understand that sometimes good deeds come with consequences." The words hung in the air like a storm cloud, heavy and threatening. What did he mean? Was this some sort of warning? As the tension between them grew, Marcus realized he had stepped into something far beyond a simple thank you. The air crackled with uncertainty, and he was left standing there, wondering what this man wanted and how deep the connection ran. Just as the man opened his mouth to speak again, Marcus's phone buzzed in his pocket, breaking the tension for a moment. He glanced down, distracted by the sudden noise, and when he looked back up, the man had stepped back, his expression unreadable. The moment felt suspended in time, and Marcus could feel his heart racing as he faced the unknown. What was coming next? Was this the end of a simple act of kindness, or the beginning of something much bigger? Marcus took a deep breath, the weight of uncertainty settling on his shoulders. He had no idea what would happen next, but one thing was clear. His life was about to change in ways he could never have imagined. The black SUV idled quietly at the curb, a symbol of the unseen forces at play, waiting for the next move. And as the man turned and walked away, leaving Marcus with more questions than answers, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life was about to spiral into a whirlwind of unexpected events. What did this all mean for him, and how was he going to navigate the storm that lay ahead? All he could do was brace himself for what was to come, knowing that the real story was just beginning. Marcus stood there, his mind racing as he watched the man walk back to the black SUV. The unease settled deeper in his gut. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had just become part of a much larger story, one that involved Lisa and perhaps something much darker than he realized. Who was that man? What did he mean by good deeds come with consequences? As the SUV drove off, Marcus returned to his porch, his coffee now forgotten. He sat there, replaying the events of the previous day in his mind. Helping Lisa had felt like the right thing to do. She had been in a tight spot, and he had always believed in lending a hand to those in need. It was how he had been raised, taught by his mother to show kindness and compassion, even when the world didn't seem to reciprocate. But now, he wondered if he had done the right thing at all. That evening, Marcus decided to reach out to Lisa. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through his contacts until he found her number. He hesitated for a moment, contemplating if this was the best decision. Would it only complicate things more? But he needed answers, and Lisa might have them. Finally, he took a deep breath and pressed dial. Hello. Her voice was warm and familiar, and it brought a small comfort to his anxious heart. Hey, Lisa, it's Marcus. From yesterday, he said, trying to sound casual, though he felt anything but. Oh, hi. Thank you again for your help. I really appreciate it, she replied, genuine gratitude evident in her tone. Yeah, no problem. I was just wondering. Is everything okay? A guy came to my house today, and it seemed a bit intense. I just wanted to make sure you're all right, he said, the concern creeping into his voice. There was a brief silence on the other end, and Marcus could hear her breathing. Intense? What do you mean? The guy was, well, he didn't say much, but he knew you. He mentioned how I helped you with your tire, he explained, his words tumbling out faster than he intended. Oh no, Lisa said, a note of panic rising in her voice. I didn't think anyone would come looking for me. I should have warned you. I've had some trouble lately, and that's why I was in a rush yesterday. Marcus felt a wave of alarm wash over him. Trouble? What kind of trouble? She hesitated, and he could hear her swallow hard. It's complicated. There's something I got mixed up in that I didn't mean to. I thought it was behind me, but it seems it's not. Is it dangerous? He pressed, concern mounting. I don't know. I hope not. I just didn't want to drag anyone else into it, especially you, Lisa confessed, her voice trembling slightly. Look, you can trust me. I'm here for you, Marcus reassured her, though he couldn't shake the growing sense of dread. Thank you, Marcus. I really mean that, but please, just be careful. If you see that man again, don't engage with him. He's not someone you want to get involved with, she said urgently. Before he could respond, the line went dead. Marcus stared at his phone, confusion and worry gnawing at him. He had wanted to help, but now it felt like he was tangled in a web of secrets and danger that he never signed up for. That night, sleep eluded him. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the quiet neighborhood around him. He thought about Lisa and the weight of her situation. She had seemed so strong and hopeful, yet now it felt like she was fighting a battle all alone. It tugged at his heart, igniting a fire within him to do something. But what could he do? He was just an ordinary guy. The next morning, determined to find out more, Marcus decided to take action. He put on a pair of comfortable shoes and made his way to the small coffee shop down the street where he knew Lisa often went. Maybe she would show up and they could talk more. He needed to understand what kind of trouble she was in and how he could help. As he entered the shop, the scent of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, mingling with the sounds of light chatter and clinking cups. He ordered a coffee and took a seat by the window, his eyes scanning the street for any sign of Lisa. Minutes turned into an hour, and as he sipped his drink, he felt a nagging sense of disappointment settle in. Perhaps she wouldn't come. Perhaps this was all a mistake. Just as he was about to give up, the door swung open, and in walked Lisa, her face a mix of relief and worry. Marcus's heart raced as he waved her over. She hesitated for a moment, glancing around the shop before joining him at the table. Hey, I'm glad you came, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know if I should, she admitted, looking around nervously as if someone might be watching them. But I wanted to explain. There are things you don't know. Tell me, he urged, leaning closer, his concern deepening. Lisa took a deep breath, glancing at the door again before speaking. A while back, I got involved with the wrong people. At first, I thought they were just helping me out, but I quickly realized they were not who they seemed. I managed to get away, but they still have eyes on me. That man you met yesterday is one of their enforcers. They keep tabs on me, and I'm scared they might come after you now too." Marcus felt his stomach twist at her words. "Why didn't you say anything before?" "I could have." "I didn't want to put you in danger," she interrupted, her voice rising slightly before she took a calming breath. "You helped me when I needed it, and I didn't want to drag you into this. I thought it would be over by now." He rubbed the back of his neck, trying to process the information. "So what do we do now? Is there a way to make it stop?" "There might be," she said hesitantly, "but it won't be easy. I need to confront them and end this once and for all. I just don't know how they'll react. They're unpredictable, and they don't like being crossed." The weight of her words hung heavily between them, the tension thick and suffocating. Marcus felt a surge of determination mixed with fear. "You couldn't just walk away from this. I want to help you, Lisa. We can figure this out together." She looked at him, her eyes searching his for something. Maybe courage, maybe understanding. "I appreciate that, but this could get dangerous. You need to promise me that you'll stay safe, no matter what." As they spoke, the atmosphere in the cafe shifted. The door opened again, and a chill ran through Marcus as he noticed a familiar figure standing outside. The same man from the day before, the one in the black SUV, was looking right at them. The sunlight glinted off his dark glasses, hiding his expression but amplifying the threat he posed. "Marcus," Lisa whispered, her voice low and tense. "We need to go, now." Before he could react, she grabbed his hand, and they slipped out the back door of the cafe, the urgency of the moment pushing them forward. The thrill of fear coursed through Marcus's veins as they dashed down the alley, desperate to escape whatever trouble was waiting for them. Behind them, you could hear footsteps. The man was following them, and that meant they were in deeper than he ever expected. As they turned a corner, the weight of uncertainty loomed over him. What had he gotten himself into? The stakes were rising, and the game had just begun. The question now was not just how to help Lisa, but how to survive the storm that was quickly approaching. Marcus and Lisa raced through the narrow alleyways, their footsteps echoing against the brick walls. Panic surged through Marcus as he glanced over his shoulder, spotting the man in the black sunglasses trailing them. The realization hit him hard. This wasn't just about helping Lisa anymore. He was now a target too. The urgency of their situation pushed him to move faster, adrenaline fueling his every step. "Where are we going?" Marcus panted, trying to keep pace with Lisa, who was leading the way. "Just a few blocks up," she replied, her voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. "There's a friend I can trust. They'll know what to do." They turned another corner, and Marcus felt the weight of their pursuer hanging heavy in the air. "What about that man?" he asked, desperation creeping into his tone. "What does he want with you?" Lisa hesitated, her expression clouded with fear. "He works for a gang I thought I escaped. They're involved in some dangerous stuff, drug deals, threats, you name it. I got out, but they don't like loose ends." His heart raced as he processed her words. "You mean they think you know something? What could they want from you?" "I used to be close to their operations. I overheard things, saw faces I shouldn't have. It's why I tried to leave," she explained, her breath coming in quick bursts. "But they're not the kind to let go of people easily. I didn't realize the danger until it was too late." "Why didn't you report them?" Marcus asked, confusion mixing with anger. "I tried," she replied, her voice tinged with bitterness. "But they have connections. Even the police are compromised. It's why I thought going off the grid would be my best chance." Just then, they reached a rundown apartment building, its faded paint and broken windows telling a story of neglect. Lisa led Marcus through a side entrance, down a dimly lit hallway, and into a small apartment filled with mismatched furniture and flickering lights. "Stay here," she instructed, her voice firm. "I need to talk to my friend." Marcus nodded, though unease settled in his chest. He couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. He watched as Lisa stepped into a back room, closing the door behind her. The muffled sounds of her conversation drifted through the thin walls, and he couldn't help but strain to hear what was being said. He paced the small living area, glancing at the window, half expecting to see the man standing there. The thought made his heart race even faster. Suddenly, he heard raised voices from the back room, Lisa arguing with someone. His instinct was to rush in and help, but he hesitated, unsure of what he might walk into. "Lisa," You can't be serious. A deep voice said, filled with frustration. You brought him here? That's reckless. I didn't have a choice. Marcus is in this now too. He helped me. Lisa responded, her voice rising. The tension hung heavy in the air, and Marcus clenched his fists, worry gnawing at him. He couldn't just wait around. He had to know what was happening. Taking a deep breath, he moved closer to the door and pressed his ear against it. I'm not letting you put him in danger. You need to think clearly, the man insisted. If they find out he knows anything, they won't hesitate to hurt him. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine at the implications of those words. Was he really in danger just for helping her? It felt surreal, yet the gravity of the situation was all too real. Then what do you suggest? We can't just leave him out there. He's the only one I can trust right now, Lisa argued, desperation creeping into her voice. Trust? You barely know him. The man shot back, and Marcus could hear the frustration boiling beneath the surface. I know him enough to know he's not like the others, she snapped. You don't understand what it feels like to be running all the time, always looking over your shoulder. I won't put Marcus through that. Silence fell for a moment, and Marcus felt his heart pound in his chest. He wanted to burst through the door, to tell them he was willing to face whatever came next. But he held back, realizing that the choice was not his to make. Finally, the door swung open, and Lisa stepped out, her eyes wide with determination. Marcus, we need to move. Now. What's going on? Who was that? He asked, trying to keep his voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions churning inside him. That's my friend Alex. He's been helping me stay safe, she explained, glancing nervously at the door. But he thinks we need to leave the city. He has connections, and we can't stay here with that man hunting for me. Leave? But what about your stuff? Your life? Marcus protested, the thought of running away making his head spin. There's nothing for me here anymore, Lisa said, her voice tinged with sadness. They've taken everything from me. I need to start fresh, and I want you with me. We have to hurry. As they made their way down the hallway, Marcus felt a mixture of fear and determination. He wasn't just helping Lisa anymore. He was stepping into her world, a world filled with shadows and threats. They stepped outside, the afternoon sun blinding them momentarily as they moved toward the alleyway. Lisa led the way, her movements quick and purposeful. Marcus stayed close behind, scanning their surroundings for any sign of trouble. They turned a corner and found Alex waiting by an old, beat-up car. Get in, he instructed, his voice low and serious. What's the plan? Marcus asked, glancing at Lisa as they climbed into the back seat. We drive to a safe location, Alex explained, starting the engine. But we need to stay off the main roads. They'll be watching. We can't take any chances. As they pulled away from the curb, Marcus felt a strange mix of exhilaration and fear. They were in a race against time, with unknown dangers lurking in every corner. What happens if they find us? He asked, unable to keep the anxiety from his voice. They won't, Alex said firmly. We'll make sure of that, but you have to trust me. The car moved through the streets, weaving in and out of traffic as they took back roads and shortcuts. Marcus watched the buildings blur by, feeling the weight of the situation sink deeper into his bones. He was scared, but he was also resolved to protect Lisa. Lisa sat beside him, her expression tense yet focused. I can't believe this is happening, she murmured, almost to herself. We'll get through this, Marcus assured her, trying to sound confident even as doubt crept in. We're in this together now. As they navigated the winding roads, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every passing car felt like a threat. Every shadow held a hidden danger. He looked to the rearview mirror, scanning for any sign of the black SUV that had haunted them since yesterday. Suddenly, Alex cursed under his breath, gripping the steering wheel tighter. I think we might have a tail. What? Lisa exclaimed, her eyes widening in fear. Are you sure? Just keep your head down. If it's them, we need to lose them fast, Alex said, shifting gears and accelerating down a narrow side street. The tension in the car was palpable as they raced through the neighborhood, Marcus's heart pounding in rhythm with the engine. He felt the weight of every moment, every choice leading them closer to the inevitable confrontation. The chase intensified as they swerved around corners and sped down alleyways, but Marcus could feel the anxiety creeping in. They were on the brink of something far bigger than themselves, a battle not just for their lives, but for freedom and safety. Where do we go? Marcus asked, glancing at Lisa and then at Alex. There's an abandoned warehouse up ahead. We can hide out there and regroup, Alex replied, determination etched on his face. As they neared the warehouse, Marcus caught a glimpse of a dark figure in the distance, no doubt the man from the black SUV. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. This was no longer just about helping Lisa. He was now in a fight for his own life too. Get ready to run, Alex shouted, parking the car abruptly. We need to make a break for it. Marcus felt his pulse quicken as they spilled out of the car, the warehouse looming ahead like a fortress. The weight of uncertainty loomed over them, but they couldn't afford to falter now. They had come too far, and the only way out was to confront whatever awaited them in the shadows. With the sound of footsteps echoing in the distance, Marcus knew they were out of time. The tension was thick in the air, and every heartbeat felt like a countdown to the unknown. Together, they sprinted toward the entrance of the warehouse, knowing that behind them lay the consequences of their choices, and ahead was a mystery waiting to unfold. The warehouse loomed large in front of them, its rusty metal walls and shattered windows casting long shadows that swallowed the light. Marcus felt a chill creep up his spine as they sprinted toward the entrance. The air was heavy with uncertainty, and every instinct in him screamed to turn back. Yet, he couldn't abandon Lisa now, not after everything they'd been through together. Go, inside, Alex urged, pushing Lisa forward as they ducked beneath the overhang of the door. The interior was dimly lit, with beams of sunlight cutting through the cracks in the walls. Dust motes danced in the air, adding to the eerie atmosphere. Inside, the sound of their hurried breaths echoed off the concrete walls. Marcus glanced around, searching for anything they could use to defend themselves if it came to that. Old crates were piled haphazardly in one corner, and a large, rusted machine loomed in the shadows, its purpose long forgotten. Do you think they saw us? Lisa whispered, her voice trembling slightly. I hope not, Marcus replied, trying to sound braver than he felt. But we can't take any chances. As they moved deeper into the warehouse, they could hear the distant sound of tires screeching against the asphalt outside. The adrenaline surged in Marcus's veins. He knew they were running out of time. If the man in the black SUV had followed them, it wouldn't be long before he arrived. We need to find a place to hide, Alex said, his eyes darting around the expansive room. There are too many entry points here. We can't be cornered. Marcus nodded, his heart pounding louder with every passing second. They hurried toward a row of large shipping containers, stacked against the back wall, the heavy metal providing a makeshift barrier. Just as they reached the containers, they heard the sound of footsteps approaching, echoing ominously in the silence. Get down, Alex hissed, pulling them behind the nearest container. They crouched low, their hearts racing in unison. The tension in the air thickened as they listened intently. The footsteps grew louder, and Marcus felt a knot tighten in his stomach. The man was close. He could almost sense the danger radiating from him. Please, just go away, Lisa murmured under her breath, her eyes wide with fear. Then they heard the voice, the same deep, commanding voice that had filled the room with tension earlier. They can't hide from me, the man said, his tone dripping with confidence. I know they're here. Marcus held his breath, praying that they wouldn't be found. He could see the shadow of the man moving near the entrance, his silhouette framed by the light filtering through the doorway. We'll find you, Lisa. You can't escape this. You belong to us, he called out, his voice echoing in the empty warehouse. Marcus exchanged a glance with Lisa and Alex, determination hardening in his chest. You wouldn't let them take her. Not now, not ever. The man stepped further inside, his footsteps crunching over debris as he scanned the area. Marcus felt the urge to jump out and confront him, to show him that they wouldn't be cowed. But logic held him back. It was too dangerous. Think, Alex whispered urgently. We need a distraction. If we can lure him away, we might have a chance. Like what? Lisa asked, her eyes darting nervously around the room. Marcus's mind raced. What if we create noise? Something to draw him away from us? Are you crazy? Lisa whispered, her face pale. What if it backfires? It's better than waiting here to be caught. Marcus argued, feeling the urgency of the moment. We have to try. If we don't, they'll find us anyway. Reluctantly, Lisa nodded. They scanned the area for anything they could use. Just then, Marcus spotted a loose piece of metal hanging from a nearby crate. It could be heavy enough to make a noise when dropped. "Okay, I'll throw this," he said, grabbing the metal and keeping his voice low. "On the count of 3, we'll create a diversion and then move toward the back exit." Lisa and Alex nodded, their expressions tense but resolute. 1, 2, 3. Marcus hurled the metal piece across the room. It clattered loudly against another crate, the sound ricocheting off the walls. The man turned instantly, his focus shifting toward the noise. "Is someone there?" he shouted, moving toward the sound. "Now," Alex urged, and they bolted from behind the container, slipping into the shadows as they hurried toward the back exit. They sprinted through the maze of shipping containers, hearts racing, hoping they wouldn't be seen. Marcus felt the adrenaline coursing through him, pushing him forward despite the fear gnawing at his mind. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps grew louder behind them. "They're running," the man shouted, the fury evident in his voice. "Don't let them escape." Marcus's stomach dropped as they reached the rear door, which was partially ajar. He glanced back and saw the man charging toward them, a fierce determination in his eyes. "Move," he shouted, shoving the door open with all his strength. They tumbled out into the alley behind the warehouse, gasping for breath as they raced into the open space. But the alley was dark and narrow, and they could hear the sound of more footsteps approaching from both ends. "This way," Alex called, leading them deeper into the maze of alleys. They turned sharply, navigating through the twisting paths, but Marcus could feel the danger closing in. He glanced over his shoulder and saw shadows moving quickly behind them. "Are they coming?" Lisa panted, struggling to keep pace. "I don't know," Marcus replied, pushing himself to run faster. "We can't stop now." They turned another corner and stumbled onto a busy street filled with people. The bright lights and noise felt disorienting compared to the tense quiet of the warehouse. "Blend in," Alex shouted, pulling them toward a group of people waiting at a bus stop. "Act natural." Marcus did his best to calm his racing heart. He kept his head down, trying to look casual, but he could feel eyes on them. The sensation of being hunted weighed heavily on him, and he fought to keep his composure. The man's voice rang out again, louder this time, echoing through the crowd. "They're out there. Find them." Fear surged through Marcus as he realized they were still being pursued. He glanced around, searching for a way out. They needed to escape this chaos, but how? A bus pulled up, its doors hissing open. Alex didn't hesitate. "Get on. We have to get out of here." They piled onto the bus, hoping to blend in among the passengers. Marcus found a seat near the back, pulling Lisa down beside him. He could feel her trembling, and he took her hand, squeezing it reassuringly. As the bus lurched forward, Marcus glanced out the window, scanning the street for any sign of their pursuer. People moved in every direction, oblivious to the danger that lurked behind them. "Do you think we lost him?" Lisa whispered, her voice barely audible over the rumble of the engine. "I hope so," Marcus replied, but doubt gnawed at him. The tension felt too thick, and he knew this wasn't over yet. The bus made its way through the city, the landscape changing as they passed familiar landmarks. Yet, the sense of unease didn't fade. Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that the man was still hunting them, that they were still in danger. He turned to Lisa, concern etched on his face. "What happens if they find us? What if they catch up?" She took a deep breath, steeling herself. "Then we fight. We can't let them take me back. I won't go back to that life." As the bus continued to move, they shared a moment of silence, each lost in their thoughts. The reality of their situation was sinking in. They were tangled in something much bigger than they had anticipated. And then it happened. The bus slowed, and Marcus felt his heart drop as he spotted a familiar black SUV parked on the street ahead. It was unmistakable. "No, no, no," he muttered under his breath, panic rising in his chest. The SUV's doors swung open, and the same men from the warehouse climbed out, their eyes scanning the crowd. The sight of them sent a jolt of fear through Marcus. "Get down," he shouted, and without thinking, he pulled Lisa low into the seat. "Did they see us?" she whispered, her voice shaky. "I don't know, but we can't stick around to find out," he said, glancing toward the front of the bus where the driver seemed oblivious to the unfolding drama. The men began to move through the crowd, their eyes sharp and focused. Marcus's breath quickened as he realized they were heading toward the bus. "Alex, what do we do?" he asked, feeling the weight of desperation settle on him. "We have to get off this bus," Alex said, looking out the window, calculating their options. "When the doors open, we run. No hesitation." Marcus nodded, the adrenaline surging through him once more. This was it, the moment that would determine everything. As the bus finally came to a halt, he held his breath, ready to make his move. The doors hissed open, and the world outside felt both frightening and freeing. "Go!" Alex shouted, and they burst from the bus into the chaos of the street, hearts racing as they dashed into the crowd, desperate for freedom and safety. But the hunters were close behind, and as Marcus ran, he knew the climax was approaching, the moment where everything could change forever. The weight of the world rested on their shoulders, and they could only hope that they would emerge from this darkness victorious. As Marcus, Lisa, and Alex bolted into the throng of people, the city buzzed with life. The vibrant street was filled with chatter, laughter, and the aroma of street food, but all they could feel was the tightening grip of fear. Marcus's heart pounded in his chest, urging him to run faster, to escape whatever shadows were lurking behind them. "Keep moving," Alex shouted, glancing over his shoulder. The men from the SUV were gaining ground, weaving through the crowd with surprising agility. Their eyes were locked on the trio, a predatory gleam in their gaze. Marcus risked a glance back, and his stomach twisted. One of the men, a towering figure with a menacing scowl, was shouting something, rallying his companions. The hunters were closing in, and the noise of the city felt suffocating as the reality of their situation pressed down on them. "Over here," Lisa cried, pulling them toward a narrow alleyway that split off from the main street. It was a risk, but it was a chance. They dashed into the alley, the shadows swallowing them as they pressed against the cool brick wall. Marcus felt a wave of relief wash over him as the sounds of the busy street faded, but it was short-lived. They huddled together, trying to catch their breath. "What's the plan?" Marcus whispered, the fear evident in his voice. "We need to find a way to lose them, at least temporarily," Alex said, his eyes scanning their surroundings. "There has to be a back exit or another street we can take." As they considered their options, Lisa suddenly pulled away from them. "Wait," she said, her eyes wide with realization. "I think I know why they're after me." "What do you mean?" Marcus asked, a knot forming in his stomach. "My father," Lisa hesitated, her voice trembling. "He was involved in something big before I left, something dangerous. He worked with powerful people who didn't take kindly to betrayal. I thought I could escape that life, but I must have drawn their attention." "Your father?" Alex echoed, disbelief in his tone. "What did he do?" "He was mixed up in illegal activities. Money laundering, trafficking, you name it. I ran away to protect myself, and I thought I'd finally escaped. But if they're after me now, it means he's in trouble too. They must think I know something." "Great," Marcus muttered, trying to keep his anxiety in check. "So, we're not just dealing with some random guys. This is serious. We need to find help, and fast." Before they could formulate a plan, the sound of footsteps echoed ominously down the alley. "They're coming," Alex warned, his expression grim. "We can't stay here." Just as they turned to flee deeper into the alley, a woman's voice called out from the shadows. "Hey, you three!" Marcus spun around, instinctively stepping in front of Lisa. A woman emerged from the darkness, her eyes sharp and watchful. She wore a leather jacket and had a confident air about her. "You need to move. They're right behind you." "Who are you?" Lisa demanded, her voice steady despite the chaos. "I'm someone who can help," the woman replied, glancing nervously toward the entrance of the alley. "But we have to go now." Marcus felt a surge of hope mixed with skepticism. "How do we know we can trust you?" "Do you have a better option?" She shot back, her tone urgent. "You can either take your chances with them, or you can come with me and figure this out. I promise I won't let anything happen to you." The decision weighed heavily on Marcus. He could feel the tension in the air, thick with the threat of danger. Every instinct urged him to be cautious, but time was running out. The footsteps grew louder, echoing off the alley walls. "Okay, we'll go with you," Marcus said finally, steeling himself. "Lead the way." Without waiting for a response, The woman turned and led them deeper into the alley, her strides quick and purposeful. They navigated a series of twists and turns, and soon found themselves in a quiet side street that was eerily deserted. As they hurried along, Marcus tried to make sense of what was happening. Who was this woman, and how did she know they needed help? Questions swirled in his mind, but there was no time to voice them. After what felt like an eternity of running, the woman stopped in front of a nondescript door nestled between two rundown buildings. She glanced around before opening it, motioning for them to enter. Inside. Now, she urged, her voice low but insistent. They rushed inside, and Marcus felt a strange mix of fear and relief wash over him as the door clicked shut behind them. The small room was dimly lit, filled with old furniture and the faint scent of something like burnt coffee. A flickering overhead light cast shadows across the walls, making the space feel even more claustrophobic. "Who are you?" Lisa asked again, her voice firmer this time. "I'm Mia," the woman replied, taking a breath to steady herself. "And I know more about your father than you realize. We need to talk." Marcus's heart raced. "What do you know?" Mia's expression turned serious. "Your father was involved in a network that operates beyond the law. He might have crossed someone who has a lot of power and influence. They're not just after you. They want to silence anyone connected to them, and that includes you three." "Why do you care?" Alex interjected, skepticism written all over his face. "What's your connection?" "I have my reasons," Mia said, her voice low. "Let's just say I've seen what these people are capable of. They won't stop until they get what they want. And if they think you know something, you're as good as dead." Marcus felt the weight of her words settle on his shoulders. It was worse than he had imagined. They weren't just being hunted. They were entangled in a web of criminal activity that could lead to their demise. "What do we do now?" Lisa asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We need to get you out of here, but we can't just run blindly. We have to find a way to outsmart them," Mia replied, her eyes narrowing as she assessed the situation. "There's a safe house not far from here. If we can get you there, we'll have a better chance of figuring out our next move." "What about the guys in the SUV?" Marcus asked, his heart racing at the thought of being discovered. "They're good at tracking. They don't know I'm involved," Mia assured them. "As long as we stay low and move quickly, we should be able to slip past them." Before Marcus could respond, a sudden crash echoed from the entrance of the building. They all froze, eyes wide as the sound of footsteps reverberated through the small space. "Move!" Mia shouted, her voice urgent. "We have to go, now." Without hesitation, they followed her toward the back of the room, where a window was slightly ajar. It was their only chance. As Mia pushed it open, Marcus could hear the footsteps growing closer. "Go, go," Mia urged, helping Lisa through first. Marcus climbed through next, his heart racing as he landed on the ground outside. The alley was dark, but he could see the faint outline of Mia and Alex scrambling after them. Just as Mia emerged, a group of men burst through the front door, their figures silhouetted against the dim light. "There they are," one of them shouted, eyes locking onto Marcus and the others. They turned and ran, adrenaline surging through their veins as they sprinted down the alley. The stakes were higher than ever, and the urgency of their situation pressed down on them like a heavy weight. As they dashed through the night, Marcus could feel the danger closing in, the echoes of pursuit hot on their heels. They had to keep moving, but with every step, the reality of their predicament sank deeper into his bones. They were running for their lives, and the only way out of this mess was to confront the truth about Lisa's past, her father's choices, and the dark world that had come back to claim her. With every breath, the tension mounted, and the climax loomed just ahead, a collision of fate and determination waiting to unfold. As Marcus, Lisa, and Alex sprinted down the dim alley, the echoes of their pursuers grew louder. Each footfall felt like a countdown, a reminder that time was running out. They turned a corner, hearts pounding, and raced into the heart of the city, where the streetlights glowed like beacons of hope amidst the encroaching darkness. "Keep moving," Mia urged, leading the way. "We're almost there." Their breaths came in ragged gasps as they dashed through the crowded streets. The pulse of the city was a stark contrast to the fear coursing through their veins. Marcus stole a quick glance back and spotted two of the men from the SUV trailing them, determination etched on their faces. They were relentless, and each second that passed felt like a noose tightening around their necks. Mia led them to a narrow side street that opened up into a small plaza. The quiet was eerie, the usual sounds of the city replaced by a tense silence. In the center of the plaza stood an old, decrepit building, its windows boarded up. "This is it," Mia said, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "We can hide inside until it's safe." As they entered the building, the musty air enveloped them, a stark contrast to the cool night outside. Inside, the space was dark, illuminated only by the faint glow of moonlight seeping through the cracks in the boarded-up windows. They moved cautiously, scanning the area for any signs of danger. "Are you sure this is safe?" Lisa whispered, her eyes darting nervously around the room. "Trust me," Mia replied, her voice low. "We need to regroup and come up with a plan. They won't expect us to be here." As they huddled together, Marcus could feel the tension in the air. The weight of their situation pressed down on him, each second feeling like an eternity. He turned to Mia, desperation creeping into his voice. "What do we do now? How do we get out of this?" Mia took a deep breath. "We have to find out who's behind this. If we can get evidence of what your father was involved in, we might have a chance to expose them, but we need to be smart about it." Suddenly, a noise from outside made them freeze. The sound of footsteps echoed through the plaza, drawing closer. Marcus felt his heart drop as the realization hit him. They had to act quickly. "Get ready to move," Mia instructed, her voice urgent. "We'll slip out the back and make our way to my contact. He has connections that can help us." Just as they began to move, the door slammed open, and the men from the SUV stormed in, their expressions filled with rage and determination. "There they are," one of them shouted, pointing directly at them. "Run," Mia shouted, pushing Marcus and the others toward the back exit. They sprinted toward the rear of the building, adrenaline fueling their every move. Marcus glanced back as the men advanced, their eyes blazing with fury. It was a race against time, and every second counted. As they burst through the back door into an alley, the cool night air hit them like a wave, refreshing yet terrifying. They dashed into the shadows, but the men were hot on their heels, shouting threats that echoed off the brick walls. "Split up," Mia yelled. "We'll meet at the safe house in an hour." Marcus's heart raced as he and Lisa took off in one direction while Alex and Mia veered off in another. The sounds of their pursuers faded slightly, but the threat was still there, lingering like a dark cloud overhead. "Where do we go?" Lisa panted, her face pale with fear. "Just keep moving," Marcus urged, scanning their surroundings. They darted through a series of back alleys, trying to lose their pursuers. The city felt like a maze, each turn adding to the tension building between them. After what felt like an eternity of running, they found themselves in a quiet park, the moonlight filtering through the trees. They slowed down, trying to catch their breath, but their respite was short-lived. "We can't stay here long," Marcus said, glancing around nervously. "They'll find us if we don't keep moving." Just then, a low rumble echoed through the night. A dark SUV pulled into the park, its headlights cutting through the shadows. Marcus's stomach dropped. "Not again," Lisa whispered, her eyes wide with fear. The vehicle came to a halt, and the engine shut off. The two men who had been chasing them climbed out, scanning the area with menacing intensity. It was a standoff, and the stakes couldn't be higher. "Nowhere to run this time," one of the men shouted, a smug grin spreading across his face. Marcus and Lisa exchanged terrified glances, their hearts pounding in their chests. They were trapped. But before they could react, a figure stepped out of the shadows. It was Mia, a determined look on her face. "You're not taking them," she shouted, standing her ground. "Mia, get back," Marcus yelled, instinctively stepping in front of Lisa. The men laughed, their confidence brimming. "You think you can protect them? You're outnumbered." In that tense moment, Mia pulled out a small device from her pocket. "I have something you don't," she said, her voice steady. "Evidence. And if you don't leave them alone, I'll make sure everyone knows what you've been up to." The men paused, surprise flickering across their faces. "What are you talking about?" Mia pressed a button on the device, and a holographic projection appeared in the air between them. It showed documents, photos, and evidence of the illegal activities Lisa's father had been involved in. The atmosphere shifted as the men's expressions turned from amusement to alarm. "You're bluffing?" one of them sneered, but there was a hint of uncertainty in his voice. Mia took a step forward. I'm not bluffing. You know what happens if this gets out? You'll lose everything. The standoff hung in the air, and Marcus could feel the tension escalating. They were standing on the edge of a knife, and one wrong move could tip the balance. Get in the car, the taller man growled, his voice low and threatening. We can settle this differently. No, Mia said firmly. This ends now. Let them go, and I'll destroy this. For a moment, it felt like the world was at a standstill. The men exchanged glances, weighing their options. Marcus held his breath, praying for a miracle. Suddenly, the taller man lunged at Mia, but before he could reach her, she pressed another button on her device. Alarms blared through the park, the sound piercing the night. Run, Mia shouted as the men hesitated, confusion spreading across their faces. Marcus grabbed Lisa's hand, and they took off, sprinting into the darkness as the sound of sirens echoed in the distance. The men shouted angrily, but they were losing their grip on the situation. They ran deeper into the park, weaving through trees and shadows, adrenaline propelling them forward. The sound of footsteps faded behind them, drowned out by the cacophony of alarms. Where do we go? Lisa gasped, her breath coming in ragged bursts. Just keep moving, Marcus urged, pushing them onward. After what felt like an eternity, they stumbled upon a small clearing, the sounds of the city dimming into the background. Did we lose them? Lisa asked, her eyes wide with fear. I think so, Marcus replied, trying to catch his breath, but we can't let our guard down. Just then, they heard a familiar voice. There you are. It was Alex, and he was breathless but unharmed. I thought I'd lost you too. Did you see Mia? Marcus asked, worry creeping into his voice. Alex nodded. She's fine. She's getting us to safety. We need to regroup. As they stood together, Marcus felt a surge of relief. They had escaped, at least for now, but he couldn't shake the feeling that the danger wasn't over yet. Just then, a loud explosion echoed in the distance, and the ground shook beneath them. What was that? Lisa shouted, fear written all over her face. Marcus's heart sank as the reality of their situation hit him. The men weren't going to let them go easily. They were still out there, and now it was only a matter of time before they returned with a vengeance. We need to get out of here, Alex said urgently. We can't stay exposed like this. As they turned to flee, Marcus noticed something glinting in the moonlight behind them, a black object tucked in the grass. He picked it up, his heart racing as he realized it was a keychain with a familiar logo. The logo of a powerful organization that had ties to Lisa's father. His pulse quickened. This is bad. They were here. What do you mean? Lisa asked, confusion clouding her face. They're not just after you. They're after anyone connected to your father, Marcus said, dread filling him. We need to find out how deep this goes. Suddenly, the air was filled with the roar of engines. A convoy of SUVs into the clearing, headlights cutting through the darkness like searchlights. Get down, Marcus shouted, pulling Lisa to the ground just as the SUVs skated to a halt. The doors swung open and figures poured out, more men, armed and ready for a fight. It was a trap, and they had walked right into it. Move, Alex shouted, and they scrambled to their feet, running in the opposite direction as gunshots rang out around them. Marcus's heart raced as they dodged bullets, the adrenaline surging through him. They were fighting for their lives, but it felt like they were running in circles, the walls closing in on them. As they dashed through the park, Marcus felt a surge of determination. They weren't just fighting for themselves, they were fighting for the truth. They had to expose what Lisa's father had done, and they had to survive long enough to do it. They sprinted toward a nearby street, the sound of the pursuing men growing closer. We need to split up again, Marcus yelled, desperation clawing at him. Are you crazy? Lisa shouted. What if we get caught? We have to take the risk, he insisted. If we stay together, they'll catch us all. We have to find a way to regroup later. With a heavy heart, they made the split. Lisa and Alex veered left while Marcus took a right, hoping to create enough distance to find safety. He ran down the street, the adrenaline fueling his escape, but every step felt heavier than the last. Just when he thought he was finally in the clear, he felt a hand grip his shoulder. He spun around, ready to fight, but it was Mia, her face determined. Good, you found me, she said, her breathless excitement contrasting with the chaos around them. I have a plan. What's the plan? Marcus asked, still catching his breath. We need to get to the main building downtown, she explained quickly. I can access the security systems and upload the evidence to the public, but we need to move fast. Marcus nodded, his heart racing. Lead the way. As they ran through the streets, the city felt like a labyrinth, every corner a potential danger. But Marcus was fueled by a newfound resolve. They were going to fight back. Finally, they reached the main building, a towering structure that loomed above them. They slipped through the entrance, and Mia quickly led Marcus to a secured room. Stay here, she instructed. I'll hack the system and upload everything. Marcus nodded, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on him. As he watched her work, he couldn't help but feel a sense of hope. They were taking control, fighting back against the forces that wanted to silence them. Just as the progress bar on Mia's screen reached 100%, the door burst open. The same men who had been chasing them charged in, eyes blazing with anger. You think you can get away with this? The taller man growled, stepping forward, fists clenched. Mia quickly pressed a button on her device, and the room was filled with blaring alarms. It's too late for that, she shouted defiantly. Marcus felt a surge of fear, but also determination. They had come this far, and they couldn't back down now. The men lunged forward, but Marcus stood his ground, ready to protect Mia and fight back. You won't stop us, he shouted, adrenaline surging through him. Just as they closed in, a burst of gunfire echoed from the hallway. The men turned in surprise, their eyes widening in shock as a group of police officers stormed in, guns raised. Drop your weapons, you're surrounded. One of the officers shouted, their presence a welcome relief. The men hesitated, but it was too late. The officers moved in swiftly, disarming them with precision. Marcus stood frozen, disbelief washing over him. They had made it. They had fought back, and help had arrived just in time. As the chaos settled, Mia turned to Marcus, a triumphant smile spreading across her face. We did it. But before they could celebrate, the tall man smirked, his eyes glinting with malice. You think this is over? You have no idea what's coming. In that moment, everything clicked into place for Marcus. Wait, you planned this? He realized, his voice thick with realization. This was all part of your plan. The man's smile widened. You're smarter than I thought, kid. But it's too late now. You just set off a chain reaction you can't control. Panic surged through Marcus as he turned to Mia, who looked equally bewildered. The weight of their fight hung heavy in the air, and he realized they were caught in a web far more complicated than they had imagined. The officers moved to secure the men, but Marcus's mind raced. What did you mean? He demanded, taking a step toward the man. Let's just say, your father wasn't the only one involved in this, the man said, his voice dripping with malice. And now that the evidence is out, you're all in danger. There are forces at play that you can't even begin to understand. With that, the man was shoved toward the exit, his laughter echoing through the room. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't over. They had uncovered a truth, but it was only the beginning. As the officers secured the area and began taking statements, Marcus turned to Mia and Alex, determination etched on his face. We have to find out more. We can't let them win. Mia nodded, her expression serious. We'll dig deeper. We have to expose everything. And just like that, the fight wasn't over. It had only just begun. The truth was more dangerous than they had ever imagined, but they were ready to face it head-on. Together, they would fight for justice, for themselves, and for everyone affected by the shadows of corruption that loomed over their lives. But as they walked out of the building, a feeling of dread washed over Marcus. He couldn't shake the sense that they were being watched, that the shadows were still lurking just beyond the light. This was a battle they had to win, but the war was far from over. As they stepped out into the bright sunlight, Marcus could still hear the echoes of the confrontation replaying in his mind. The tall man's chilling words haunted him. There are forces at play that you can't even begin to understand. What did he mean? Who else was involved? He glanced at Mia and Alex, who were deep in conversation about what to do next. We need to gather more evidence, Mia said, her voice steady despite the chaos they had just faced. If we can uncover the entire network behind this, we can expose them once and for all. Marcus nodded, feeling a surge of determination. They had come too far to back down now. We need to be careful, though. If they know we're onto them, they could strike again. We have to stay one step ahead. Alex sighed, running a hand through his hair. So, what's our plan? We can't just sit here and wait for something to happen. Mia pulled out her phone and opened a document. I've been compiling everything I found from the security system. It includes names, locations, and connections to other individuals involved in this operation. We can start there. Marcus felt a thrill of hope. They had a lead. Let's get to my house. It'll be safer, and we can figure out our next move without drawing too much attention. As they made their way to Marcus's house, the weight of their discovery settled heavily on him. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. He glanced over his shoulder, scanning the streets for any sign of danger. We need to hurry, he urged, quickening his pace. Once inside, they gathered around Marcus's kitchen table, a pile of papers and devices spread out before them. Mia began to explain her findings, her voice a blend of excitement and urgency. The connections are deeper than we thought. Lisa's father isn't just involved. There are people in high places, even some who work for the government. Are you serious? Alex's eyes widened. How can we take them down if they're that powerful? We expose them, Marcus said, his mind racing. We go public with this. If we can gather enough evidence, we can get the media involved. They won't be able to hide. Mia nodded. But we need to be smart about it. If we're too reckless, we could put ourselves in danger. Marcus agreed. They had to be careful. He thought about his father, who had been entangled in this web of corruption for years. I won't let this go on any longer. If we can bring this to light, it will protect others from going through what my dad did. For the next few hours, they worked tirelessly, organizing information and strategizing their next steps. The sunlight began to fade outside, casting long shadows in the room, but their determination only grew stronger. As they pieced together the puzzle, the urgency of their mission intensified. Finally, as the clock struck 10, they finished their plan. We'll contact a trusted journalist tomorrow, Mia said, exhaustion creeping into her voice. Someone who can help us get this information out there without endangering ourselves. Marcus felt a mix of relief and anxiety. They had a plan, but it was only the beginning. We have to be ready for anything. They won't take this lying down. The night passed in restless anticipation, and when morning arrived, it came with a renewed sense of purpose. They contacted a journalist named Sarah, who had a reputation for exposing corruption. After a tense phone call, they agreed to meet at a public cafe, a neutral ground where they could share their findings. As they approached the cafe, Marcus's heart raced. What if this was a trap? What if they were being watched? He pushed those thoughts aside, focusing on the task at hand. They needed to trust their instincts. Sarah was already there, her short dark hair framing a sharp face filled with curiosity. After introducing themselves, they dove into the details of their investigation. Sarah listened intently, taking notes and asking questions, her eyes widening with each revelation. This is incredible, she said, her voice a mix of awe and concern. If what you're saying is true, this could be a major scandal. But you have to be careful. People like this won't go down without a fight. Marcus nodded, feeling the weight of her words. We know. That's why we're here. We want to make sure this gets out safely. They spent the next hour discussing strategy and logistics. Sarah promised to do her due diligence and keep them updated, but as they left the cafe, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that danger was lurking just around the corner. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, the pieces began to fall into place. Sarah published a series of articles detailing their findings, exposing the corruption that ran deep within the government and corporate sectors. Public outrage grew as more people joined their cause, demanding accountability. As the scandal unfolded, the tall man's threats echoed in Marcus's mind. But instead of fear, he felt a sense of empowerment. They had uncovered the truth, and now they had the support of a community rallying behind them. However, the fight wasn't without its challenges. Marcus and his friends faced threats, intimidation, and attempts to silence them, but they stood strong, refusing to back down. The support from the community emboldened them, and they became symbols of hope, fighting for justice against powerful adversaries. One evening, after a particularly tough day of protests and media coverage, Marcus gathered with Mia and Alex in his living room. Can you believe how far we've come? He asked, feeling a mix of disbelief and pride. Mia smiled, her eyes shining. It's incredible. We changed things for the better. People are starting to wake up. Alex nodded, leaning back in his chair. And we've made a real difference. But it's not over yet. We need to keep pushing. As the three of them reflected on their journey, Marcus felt a sense of unity and purpose. They had faced their fears, fought against injustice, and stood together through the darkest moments. In the end, they had not just uncovered a conspiracy. They had ignited a movement that would continue long after their fight. They had learned that even in the face of adversity, hope could shine through, and that by standing together, they could create change. As he looked at his friends, Marcus knew they had formed a bond that would last a lifetime. They were more than just allies in a fight. They were family. And together, they would face whatever came next, ready to stand for the truth and protect those who needed it most. In the quiet moments that followed, Marcus took a deep breath, reflecting on everything they had accomplished. It was a reminder that even the smallest voices could challenge the loudest powers, and that courage could be found in the most unexpected places. They had learned that their fight for justice was not just about them. It was about the community, the truth, and the future they were building together.